jaunt. Hayes had learned early in life that hard work did not always come with respect. At 24 years old, he worked long hours as a delivery driver across downtown Chicago, saving money while attending night classes in business management. Every day followed the same routine: pick up packages, navigate traffic, deliver with a smile, and move on to the next address. Most customers barely looked at him, but Jordan stayed polite because professionalism mattered to him, even when recognition did not. One afternoon, his delivery route brought him to the Hamilton Towers, one of the most luxurious apartment buildings in the city. The building stood tall with polished glass walls, uniformed doormen, and marble floors that reflected the bright lobby lights. Residents walked through the entrance, dressed in expensive suits, speaking confidently into phones about meetings and investments. Jordan adjusted his delivery bag and approached the front desk. The security guard glanced at him briefly before asking him to wait near the entrance while confirming the delivery details. Jordan was used to this. Some buildings trusted drivers immediately. A tone. Others treated them cautiously. 2. After receiving approval, he entered the elevator and delivered a package to the 10th floor. The customer thanked him quickly before closing the door. Jordan turned back toward the elevator, already checking his phone for the next address. As he stepped into the lobby again, a loud voice interrupted the calm atmosphere. "My wallet is gone." A middle-aged man wearing an expensive coat stood near the front desk, visibly angry. His name was Richard Coleman, a wealthy financial consultant known by many residents in the building. He'd searched his pockets repeatedly while speaking loudly enough for everyone to hear. "I just had it upstairs," he said. "Someone took it." The lobby grew quiet. Residents slowed their movements, watching the situation unfold. Richard's eyes moved across the room until they stopped on Jordan, who was walking toward the exit. "You!" Richard said sharply. "You were just upstairs." Jordan froze, confused. "Yes, sir. I made a delivery." "My wallet disappeared right after that," Richard continued. "I want security to check him." The accusation hit Jordan like cold water. He felt. Every eye in the lobby turned toward him. "I didn't take anything," Jordan said calmly, keeping his voice steady despite the sudden tension. The security guard stepped closer, unsure how to handle the situation. Richard insisted they stop Jordan before he left. A small crowd began forming, whispers spreading quickly. Jordan raised his hands slightly, trying to remain cooperative. "You can check my bag if you want," he said. "I have nothing to hide." The guard hesitated but eventually agreed after Richard demanded action. Jordan placed his delivery bag on the counter while people watched silently. The guard searched carefully but found only packages and receipts. Richard frowned, still unconvinced. He could have hidden it somewhere, he argued. Embarrassment burned in Jordan's chest. He could feel judgment filling the room, even without words being spoken. Some residents looked uncomfortable, while others watched with quiet suspicion. "I need to finish my deliveries," Jordan said softly. "I didn't steal your wallet." Richard crossed his arms. "Then you won't mind waiting until we review security footage." Jordan knew refusing would only make things worse. He nodded and stepped aside, feeling trapped in a situation he had done nothing to create. Minutes felt painfully long as security accessed camera recordings. The lobby remained tense, filled with murmurs and sideways glances. Jordan stared at the floor, focusing on breathing slowly. This was not the first time he had felt judged without reason, but it never became easier. Finally, the security manager arrived with a tablet showing recorded footage. Everyone gathered closer. The video showed Richard entering the elevator earlier that afternoon, holding his phone and wallet together. As the elevator doors opened on his floor, he answered a phone call and shifted several papers in his hands. The wallet slipped unnoticed and fell to the elevator floor before the doors closed again. The next clip showed the elevator traveling down empty, the wallet still lying inside. Silence filled the lobby. The footage continued, revealing a cleaning staff member later discovering the wallet and bringing it directly to the lost and found office. No theft. No wrongdoing. Just a mistake. Richard's face turned pale as realization settled in. Slowly, he looked toward Jordan, who stood quietly near the entrance. I didn't realize, Richard said, his voice losing confidence. The security guard retrieved the wallet and handed it back to him. The tension that once filled the lobby shifted into awkward discomfort. Richard approached Jordan, clearly embarrassed. I apologize, he said. I jumped to conclusions. Jordan nodded politely, though the apology did not erase the humiliation he had just experienced. Dozens of strangers had watched him be treated like a criminal for simply doing his job. I understand, Jordan replied calmly, even though part of him wished understanding came sooner. As he left the building, the afternoon air felt heavier than before. He continued his deliveries, but the moment stayed in his mind. It was not only the accusation that hurt, it was how quickly people believed it. The story, however, did not end there. Later that evening, building management reviewed the situation and realized the seriousness of what had happened. Several residents expressed discomfort about how quickly suspicion had fallen on Jordan without evidence. The next day, Richard requested to meet Jordan again. This time, he waited outside the building entrance instead of inside the lobby crowd. When Jordan arrived for another delivery, Richard approached him respectfully. I owe you more than an apology, he said. I embarrassed you publicly. That wasn't right. Jordan listened quietly. Richard admitted that fear and assumption had guided his reaction. He explained that seeing someone unfamiliar near his floor made him connect unrelated events without thinking carefully. Jordan responded honestly, it happens more often than people realize. The conversation lasted only a few minutes, but it felt different from the apology in the lobby. This time, Richard listened instead of defending himself. Weeks later, Hamilton Towers introduced new staff training focused on respectful treatment of service workers and visitors. Residents began greeting delivery drivers more kindly. Small changes reflecting lessons learned from one uncomfortable moment. Jordan continued working and eventually completed his business certification. The experience stayed with him, not as anger, but as motivation. He understood that change often started with uncomfortable truth. Months later, he returned to Hamilton Towers again, but this time residents greeted him by name. Respect replaced suspicion. As he walked out after another delivery, Jordan realized something important. The accusation had revealed more than bias. It had created an opportunity for awareness. And sometimes, the strongest change did not come from being proven right, but from giving people the chance to become better than they were before. Jordan tried to focus on his work during the days that followed, but the incident at Hamilton Towers stayed in his thoughts longer than he expected. Deliveries usually blended together into routine stops and quick exchanges, yet that afternoon remained clear in his memory. What bothered him most was not the accusation itself, but how quickly suspicion had filled the room before anyone asked questions. He understood that people made mistakes, but he also understood how easily assumptions could shape reality for someone in his position. Despite everything, Jordan continued taking delivery routes near the building. Avoiding it would have meant losing valuable work hours. And he refused to let one uncomfortable experience disrupt his progress. Each morning he reminded himself why he worked so hard. Night classes were expensive, and every completed delivery moved him closer to finishing his business degree. A week later, he returned to Hamilton Towers again. As he approached the entrance, he felt a small tension in his chest, unsure whether things would feel different. The same marble floors shined beneath bright lights, but the atmosphere had changed. The security guard greeted him with a respectful nod and opened the door immediately. Good afternoon, Jordan, the guard said. Hearing his name surprised him. Jordan smiled politely and walked inside. A few residents standing near the elevators also acknowledged him, offering quick greetings instead of cautious stares. The change was subtle, but noticeable. While waiting for the elevator, George noticed a new sign placed near the front desk thanking service workers and delivery staff for their contributions. It seemed like a small gesture, yet it carried meaning. Someone had recognized that respect mattered. During his delivery, Jordan remained professional as always, but he felt slightly more at ease. When he returned to the lobby, Richard Coleman was standing near the seating area. For a brief moment, both men hesitated, unsure how to begin. Then Richard walked forward. "I've been hoping to see you again," he said sincerely. Jordan stopped, listening calmly. "I spoke with building management after everything that happened," Richard continued. "I realized I wasn't the only one who needed to reflect. The entire situation showed how quickly people can judge without thinking." Jordan nodded quietly. He appreciated the honesty more than dramatic apologies. Richard explained that he had begun attending community discussions organized by residents after the incident. Conversations about bias, fairness, and respect had started spreading through the building. Some residents admitted they had remained silent during the accusation because they felt uncomfortable speaking up. Others acknowledged they had assumed the worst simply because Jordan was unfamiliar to them. "It wasn't easy to hear," Richard admitted. "But it was necessary." Jordan responded thoughtfully. "Change usually starts when people feel uncomfortable enough to listen." The conversation ended with a handshake that felt genuine rather than forced. As Jordan left the building that day, he realized something important. Accountability, when sincere, could create real progress. Over the following months, Jordan noticed continued changes at Hamilton Towers. Delivery drivers were no longer asked to wait excessively at the entrance. Staff members treated service workers with greater patience. Residents often greeted drivers politely instead of ignoring them. These adjustments seemed small individually, but together they reshaped the environment. At the same time, Jordan's personal life began improving as well. His night classes grew more challenging, but he enjoyed learning about business operations and management strategies. For the first time, he began imagining a future beyond delivery work. He dreamed about starting his own logistics company one day, creating opportunities for workers who were often overlooked. One evening after class, his professor asked students to share experiences that influenced their understanding of leadership and ethics. Jordan hesitated before speaking, but eventually described the situation at the apartment building. He explained how quickly judgment formed and how powerful accountability became once truth emerged. The classroom grew quiet as students listened carefully. Afterward, several classmates approached him, thanking him for sharing something so personal. The discussion turned into a deeper conversation about fairness in everyday interactions, showing Jordan that his experience carried lessons beyond a single moment. Meanwhile, Hamilton Towers prepared for its annual community charity event. Building management decided to partner with local workers and small businesses, rather than hiring large corporate vendors. To Jordan's surprise, he received an invitation to attend as a guest. At first, he considered declining. Social events with residents felt outside his comfort zone. But curiosity eventually convinced him to go. The event took place in the building's rooftop garden overlooking the city skyline. Soft lights decorated the space, while music played quietly in the background. Residents, staff, and workers gathered together, creating an atmosphere that felt more inclusive than formal. When Jordan arrived, several people welcomed him warmly. Some residents introduced themselves, admitting they remembered the incident and wanted him to know they regretted staying silent at the time. Their honesty felt meaningful because it showed awareness rather than defensiveness. During the evening, Richard gave a short speech about community responsibility. Without dramatizing the situation, he spoke about how easy it was to mistake familiarity for safety and unfamiliarity for danger. He emphasized the importance of questioning assumptions before acting on fear. Jordan listened from the crowd, surprised by how openly the subject was addressed. The speech was not about guilt but growth, encouraging everyone to become more thoughtful in their actions. Sharoon, a small delivery coordination company, and had heard about his business studies. After a long conversation, she offered him a part-time internship focused on logistics, planning, and operations management. Jordan accepted immediately. Balancing work, school, and the internship proved exhausting, but it also opened new possibilities. Instead of only making deliveries, he began learning how systems operated behind the scenes. 2. He discovered how planning routes efficiently could improve working conditions for drivers and reduce stress across entire teams. Months passed quickly. Jordan gained confidence and practical experience, eventually helping design improved delivery scheduling software for the company. His dedication impressed supervisors, and they encouraged him to pursue leadership roles after graduation. One afternoon, while reviewing logistics plans in the office, Jordan reflected on how unexpected the journey had been. A moment that began with embarrassment and accusation had ultimately led to growth, opportunity, and meaningful conversations about fairness. He realized that while he could not control how others first perceived him, he could influence what came next through patience, professionalism, and resilience. Nearly a year after the incident, Jordan returned to Hamilton Towers once more. This time not as a delivery driver, but as a logistics coordinator, meeting with building management about improving package handling systems. Walking through the lobby felt different now. People greeted him confidently, recognizing him not only as a worker, but as a professional partner. As he finished the meeting and stepped outside, he paused briefly to look back at the building. The memory of that difficult afternoon remained, but it no longer carried the same weight. Instead, it represented a turning point. Jordan understood that change rarely happened instantly. It required conversations, accountability, and willingness from everyone involved. Progress was imperfect, and sometimes slow, but it was possible. He smiled slightly before continuing down the street, feeling proud not only of how far he had come, but of how one moment of truth had encouraged an entire community to see people more clearly. And for the first time, the memory of that accusation no longer felt like something that held him back. It felt like the beginning of something stronger,